Have you ever felt like time has slipped away, leaving you with regrets and unanswered questions about your journey? What if I told you that Jesus is about to restore everything you thought was lost? Yes, even those wasted years, the moments you believe have passed you by, can be redeemed by His transformative power. In today's video, we're diving into a truth that can change your perspective on the past. Jesus is in the business of restoration. Not only does He heal broken hearts, but He also redeems time itself, making it possible to reclaim what the enemy tried to steal from you. Whether it's the years spent in regret, the relationships that fell apart, or the dreams that seemed unreachable, God has the ability to turn it all around. I know it might seem hard to imagine now, but God is not limited by time. He is the one who can do the impossible, who can make things new. You're about to discover how Jesus is at work in your life, restoring everything the enemy has taken from you. Stay with us as we explore how He can make the years you thought were wasted, anointed with purpose. Beloved in Christ, if you've come towards Jesus is about to restore all of your wasted years, it's no coincidence. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the spiritual guidance and encouragement that Jesus may be bringing into your life through this channel. We all have moments in our lives when we feel as if we've missed out, when the years seem like a blur of mistakes, lost opportunities, or heartache. Maybe there are seasons in your life that you wish you could erase, events or choices you wish you could undo. Perhaps you've wondered if the time you spent in struggle, doubt, or even sin can ever be redeemed. It's easy to feel like the clock is ticking against us, as though there's no way to recover the time that's been wasted. But here's the good news. When we understand the heart of God and His plan for restoration, we realize that no time is truly wasted in His hands. In Joel 2:25, God speaks a profound promise: "I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten." This verse is a powerful reminder that God has the ability to restore not just what we've lost, but the very years that felt like they slipped away. The locusts in this passage symbolize things that consume and destroy. Whether it's the effects of sin, the scars of broken relationships, or simply the time spent feeling distant from God. Yet, God declares that He can restore those years and make them fruitful once again. We often think of time as linear, moving forward with no way to retrieve what's behind us. But with God, time is not confined to our limited perspective. He is the eternal one, and He sees things differently. He works outside the constraints of time and can redeem the past in ways that we cannot understand in our human reasoning. Jesus, through His death and resurrection, conquered time and eternity alike. This means that He holds the power to turn our years of loss into years of gain, our past heartache into future victory. To fully understand how Jesus restores wasted years, we must first grasp the concept of redemption. Redemption means more than just making up for something. It means purchasing it back, making it valuable again. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross is the ultimate act of redemption. Through His blood, He redeemed us from the curse of sin, shame, and death. He didn't just forgive us, He purchased our freedom. This same power of redemption applies to the years that have been lost. Just as Jesus paid the price for our sins, He also offers to redeem the years we feel have been stolen from us. No matter how far you feel you've fallen, or how many years you believe were wasted, Jesus can restore them. In our brokenness, we often overlook the fact that God is still at work, even when we can't see it. Think back to the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. Joseph's life was marked by betrayal, false accusations, and imprisonment. If anyone had reason to feel like their years were wasted, it was him. Yet, through all of his struggles, God had a purpose. The years Joseph spent in hardship were not wasted, but were a part of God's greater plan to elevate him to a position where he could save his family and an entire nation. Joseph himself, when reunited with his brothers, could say, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." What seemed like wasted time became the very path to God's purpose for his life. God does not waste our struggles. Even in the midst of our pain, he is working to restore and transform us. What might look like wasted years are, in reality, part of God's redemptive plan. He is not just interested in fixing what's broken on the surface. He's shaping us, refining our character, and drawing us closer to him. Our pain, our loss, and our mistakes are not meaningless in his hands. They are opportunities for his grace to shine brighter. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly does Jesus restore our wasted years? The first step is understanding that restoration begins with our relationship with him. It's only through Jesus that we can find true healing and renewal. When we turn to him with our brokenness, he doesn't just offer us forgiveness, he offers us new life, a life that can bear fruit even from the most difficult seasons. One of the most powerful ways Jesus restores our wasted years is through his presence in our daily lives. It's easy to feel as though time is wasted when we go through the motions of life without purpose. But when we invite Jesus into our daily routines, our work, our relationships, our decisions, we begin to see that he can redeem even the smallest moments. Jesus is not just concerned with our spiritual moments, but with every aspect of our lives. Consider the way he worked in the lives of the disciples. After Jesus' resurrection, he walked with two of his followers on the road to Emmaus. These disciples had experienced a deep sense of loss and disappointment, feeling that their hopes had been crushed with Jesus' death. Yet Jesus walked alongside them, revealed himself to them, and explained how everything that had happened was part of God's greater plan. The years they thought had been wasted were actually part of God's divine purpose. Likewise, when we look to Jesus in our daily lives, he can show us how the seasons we thought were wasted are woven into his divine narrative. He can reveal his purpose in every area of our lives, from our careers to our relationships to our personal struggles. The restoration Jesus offers is not just a future promise. It's something that begins in the here and now, as we walk with him every day. Restoration requires faith. It's one thing to believe that God can restore our years, but it's another thing to trust him with the process. In Jeremiah 29:11, God promises, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." But the fulfillment of that promise requires us to trust his timing and his ways. We may not understand why things have unfolded the way they did, but we can trust that God has a purpose. Jesus is asking us to release our hold on the past and trust him with our future. We may not be able to see the restoration in its fullness right now, but by walking in faith, we are allowing God to work in ways we cannot yet comprehend. As we surrender our wasted years to him, he will begin to show us how he is using them for our good and his glory. In the grand scheme of God's redemptive plan, no moment is wasted. Jesus is the one who can redeem our broken past, restore our lost time, and make us whole again. The years that feel lost or wasted are not beyond his reach. He is the great Redeemer, and he is in the process of restoring everything the enemy has stolen from you. Trust him, walk with him daily, and believe that, in his time, he will restore all of your wasted years. As we continue to reflect on how Jesus restores the years we thought were wasted, it's important to remember that restoration doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a journey that requires patience, trust, and the willingness to surrender to God's timing. Many of us desire instant change or an immediate fix for our struggles. But God often works in ways that require us to grow and mature. Through each step of this process, Jesus is drawing us closer to Himself, refining our hearts and strengthening our faith. Well, when we consider the challenges we face in life, it's easy to believe that certain seasons are lost causes. Perhaps there have been years marked by mistakes, failures, or circumstances beyond our control. Yet, Jesus offers a perspective that's radically different from the world's. In His eyes, no time is ever wasted. He has a way of weaving our pain, our struggles, and our losses into His beautiful plan. As we walk with Him daily, He shows us that the years we consider wasted are not wasted at all. They are part of a greater story, one that's filled with purpose, healing, and transformation. End chapter 29. In the midst of our struggles, Jesus calls us to keep moving forward with Him. Sometimes, it feels as if the weight of our past is too heavy to bear. But Jesus invites us to lay our burdens at His feet. He doesn't expect us to carry the weight of our mistakes and regrets alone. He is with us every step of the way, ready to redeem the broken pieces of our past and make them whole again. His grace is sufficient for us, and through His love we are able to find freedom from the chains of regret and guilt that may have held us captive for so long. It's also important to recognize that restoration is not just about the past. It's about the future as well. When Jesus restores what has been lost, He doesn't just make it like it was, He makes it better. The years we thought were wasted will become the foundation for something greater, something more beautiful than we could have imagined. Jesus takes the ashes of our past and transforms them into something that brings glory to God. He uses our scars to tell a story of His healing power, showing the world that no one is beyond redemption and no situation is too far gone for His touch. As we prepare to face the daily challenges of our faith journey, we must remember that restoration is not always an easy process. There may be times when we feel discouraged, times when we question whether anything will change. But Jesus calls us to trust Him, even in the moments when we can't see the outcome. The journey of restoration requires us to lean on Him for strength, to walk by faith and not by sight. With every step, Jesus is renewing our hearts and minds, aligning us with His will and preparing us for the future He has planned for us. In our daily walk with Jesus, we must also be willing to forgive ourselves and others. Holding on to unforgiveness can hinder the restoration process. When we hold on to grudges or allow bitterness to take root, we prevent ourselves from fully experiencing the healing and restoration that Jesus offers. Forgiveness isn't always easy, but it's essential for freedom and growth. Jesus demonstrated the ultimate act of forgiveness on the cross, and He calls us to forgive as He has forgiven us. By doing so, we open our hearts to receive His healing and allow Him to restore not only our past, but also our relationships, our peace, and our joy. One of the most beautiful aspects of walking with Jesus daily is the way He gently leads us into greater understanding of who we are in Him. Restoration isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about becoming the person God created us to be. Through our relationship with Jesus, we are constantly being transformed into His image. This transformation takes time, but with each passing day, we are becoming more of who God has always intended for us to be. As we surrender our past to Him, we make room for His perfect will to unfold in our lives. The restoration that Jesus offers is not just for our individual lives. It's for the body of Christ as a whole. When we walk with Him daily, we are part of a larger story, one that involves the redemption of the entire world. As we are restored, we are also called to help restore others. The healing and grace we receive from Jesus isn't meant to stay with us. It's meant to flow out and touch those around us. Our lives become a testimony of God's grace and restoration, and through our actions, words, and love, we participate in His redemptive work in the world. As we reflect on the years that have passed, the time that may seem wasted, we are reminded that Jesus is in the business of making all things new. He is not confined by the limitations of time or human understanding. What the enemy meant for harm, God uses for good. Every season of our lives, even the ones that seem broken, is an opportunity for God to show His glory. As we walk daily with Jesus, we begin to see the ways in which He has been at work, even in the most difficult seasons. We begin to recognize that every moment has a purpose in His plan. The restoration of our wasted years is a powerful testimony of God's love and faithfulness. It is a reminder that no matter what we have been through, no matter how many mistakes we've made, Jesus is always ready to redeem us. He sees our potential, He knows our pain, and He promises to restore all that has been lost. The journey of restoration may take time, but as we walk with Jesus daily, we can be confident that He will fulfill His promise to restore what the locusts have eaten. As we reflect on the deep promise of restoration, you might be wondering, how does this all unfold in my life? It's easy to hear about God's promises of restoration and healing, but how do we actually experience them? How does Jesus move from being a distant hope to a present reality in our lives? How does He take our broken past, our mistakes, and our wasted years and turn them into something beautiful? These are the questions that many of us struggle with, and yet these questions are not only valid, they are the very ones Jesus wants to answer as we walk with Him each day. Consider for a moment the struggles you've been facing, the challenges that make you feel like you've lost time, opportunities, or even your sense of purpose. Maybe there are years you wish you could forget, seasons where you felt disconnected, broken, or unworthy of God's love. But what if I told you that every single part of your story is significant to God? That every part of your journey, even the moments of failure and disappointment, is being redeemed by Jesus right now. Jesus is not just interested in your life as it is. He is deeply invested in restoring it to its fullness. The Bible speaks of a restoration that goes beyond what we can imagine. He promises not only to bring healing, but to bring it abundantly. But this restoration doesn't just happen on its own. It's a work that requires our participation. It requires us to allow God into our pain, our regrets, and our brokenness. We must make space for His healing touch, and sometimes that means being vulnerable enough to face the things we've been avoiding. The question is, are you ready to allow Jesus to take what feels lost and make it new again? The journey toward restoration often begins with an honest look at where we are. We may find ourselves in a place of uncertainty, wondering how our present struggles can be redeemed. But as we open our hearts to Jesus, He begins to shift our perspective. He helps us see our challenges through the lens of His grace. What once seemed hopeless now holds the potential for growth and transformation. The journey is not always easy. It may even require us to go through difficult seasons where the healing process feels slow or painful. But rest assured, as you walk with Jesus, He is at work, quietly, steadily, and powerfully. Rest assured what the enemy has tried to steal from you. This idea of restoration may seem distant, but it's more present than we realize. Often the biggest barrier to experiencing Jesus' restoration is our own disbelief. We may wonder if it's really possible for Jesus to heal the wounds of the past or make up for the years we feel we've lost? Can he truly restore everything we've been through? The answer is a resounding yes. It's important to remember that Jesus is not limited by our doubts, our mistakes, or even the years that have passed. He is the God of the impossible, and there is nothing too hard for him. Just as he has restored others, he can and will restore you. His heart for you is to bring you into the fullness of life that he promised. What would it look like in your life if you truly believed that Jesus could restore your wasted years? How might your daily walk with him change if you had full faith that he is working in your past to bring healing and restoration? Perhaps you're wondering how this process works, or what it takes to unlock the fullness of God's restorative power in your life. As we dive deeper into how Jesus restores, we'll begin to see that it's not about the effort we put in, but about our willingness to trust him in the journey. Are you willing to let go of the pain, the shame, and the regret, and allow Jesus to step in and work his restoration in your life? This is the heart of the message that Jesus wants to bring to you today. He is not done with your story. No matter where you are, no matter how long it's taken, Jesus is ready to restore what you thought was lost. He has a plan to redeem your years, your heart, and your life in ways that will leave you amazed at his goodness. Your journey is not over. It's only just beginning. And as we prepare to explore this restoration in greater depth, ask yourself, what is it that Jesus is asking me to release so that he can restore what has been broken? What part of my life have I been holding on to that he is calling me to surrender? How can I step into the fullness of his grace and trust him with my future, knowing that he is already at work restoring my past? In just a moment, we're going to dive deeper into how Jesus makes all things new and how you can experience this powerful restoration in your own life. You might still have questions or doubts, but I encourage you to keep your heart open to what Jesus wants to reveal to you. What seems impossible is within his reach. As we move forward, get ready to experience the depth of his love and the fullness of his restorative power. You may have walked through seasons of loss, pain, or confusion, but with Jesus, there is always hope for a new beginning. Keep believing, keep trusting, and get ready to receive the restoration he is offering you right now. As we've journeyed through the themes of restoration, grace, and healing, it's time to dive deeper into the powerful truth that Jesus can and will restore all the wasted years of your life. I know you may have many questions about how this restoration truly happens, how long it will take, and what role you need to play in it. But I want to tell you today, with absolute certainty, that Jesus is about to restore all that has been lost. This is not just a vague promise or a far-off hope. This is a declaration of the power and faithfulness of Jesus Christ. First, let's talk about the promise that God has made regarding restoration. In the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 25, God says, "I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten." What a powerful statement. The locusts here represent all the things that have come to steal, kill, and destroy in your life. The sin, the regret, the lost opportunities, and the brokenness. God, through Jesus, is making a divine promise. He is in the business of restoration. No matter what has been lost or taken from you, Jesus is able to give back far more than what you think you've lost. The key here is that God doesn't just restore things to their original state. He restores them to a place of even greater abundance. When Jesus restores your life, he doesn't merely give you back what you had before. Instead, he creates something new, something better. Think about the story of Job. Job lost everything. His wealth, his health, his family, all seemed to be destroyed. Yet, by the end of the story, God didn't just restore Job to his former state. He blessed him with even more. The years that seemed wasted were not wasted at all. They became a part of God's greater plan to reveal his goodness, his mercy, and his power. Now, I understand that you may be sitting here wondering, but how does this happen in my life? How can Jesus restore the years I've lost? Let me tell you, it all begins with surrender. Restoration is not something we can earn or achieve through our own strength. It's a gift of grace that Jesus offers freely to those who are willing to surrender their brokenness to him. When we come to Jesus with open hearts, acknowledging our pain, our regrets, and our failures, we make space for him to do his work of healing. The process of restoration often begins when we let go of the belief that we have to fix things ourselves. We may try to control our circumstances, repair our own mistakes, or cover up the scars of our past. But Jesus invites us to lay down our burdens and trust him with everything. He is the only one who can truly heal, restore, and redeem the lost years of our lives. He is the great restorer. He has a plan for your life that is greater than anything you could imagine. This restoration process also involves forgiveness. Jesus can't restore what we're holding on to in bitterness and unforgiveness. If we are holding on to past hurts, resentments, or grudges, it creates a wall between us and the healing power of God. Forgiveness is not about excusing the wrongs that have been done to us. It's about releasing the burden of unforgiveness that keeps us stuck in the past. When we forgive, we free ourselves to experience the fullness of God's restoration. Another key aspect of restoration is trust. The restoration of your wasted years is not something that happens immediately. It's a process, and it requires you to trust that God is at work, even when you can't see the results right away. There will be times when you may feel discouraged, when the healing seems slow, or when you wonder if anything is really changing. But in those moments, remember that Jesus is always working behind the scenes. He is restoring you, even when you can't see it. Just like the seed that grows in the soil unseen, his restoration is happening in ways you may not immediately recognize, but trust him, it's happening. Esem glena, taren hareneke. Remind us, you are yet little and is yet big. One of the most beautiful truths about Jesus restoring your wasted years is that he does it in a way that glorifies God. The restoration of your life will not only impact you, but it will also be a testimony to others of God's goodness and faithfulness. Your story of redemption becomes a living testimony of what God can do when we trust him with our pain and our past. People will look at your life and see the transformative power of Jesus, how he took what was broken, what seemed hopeless, and made it whole again. So, what does restoration look like in practical terms? Restoration doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes your heart. It gives you a renewed sense of purpose, a fresh vision for the future, and the deep peace of knowing that Jesus is making all things new. As we come to the end of this section, I want to encourage you to reflect on the ways that Jesus is already working in your life. Even if you can't see the full picture yet, trust that he is at work. The restoration of your wasted years is not a distant dream. It's a present reality that Jesus is making happen right now. Open your heart to him, surrender your past, and let him do what only he can do. He will restore your wasted years, and he will do it in ways that will exceed all of your expectations. Your story is far from over. Jesus is just getting started. Restoration is a continual process, and while the moments of clarity and breakthrough might feel like the apex of the journey, they are only the beginning. As we embark on this path forward, it's vital to understand that Jesus doesn't just restore what was lost. He invites us into a lifelong journey of healing, growth, and transformation. The process of restoration isn't a one-time event. It is a gradual unfolding of His grace, power, and love. To truly understand the path forward, we need to reframe the way we view restoration. Many people think of restoration as a quick fix, a fast track to recovery. But in reality, restoration often takes time. Just as a broken bone heals slowly, as we go through the process of restoration, it requires patience, trust, and faith. The road to healing is often winding, and the scars may still be visible, but they are reminders of God's faithfulness and how far we've come. In this section, let's explore what it means to walk forward in restoration. What steps can we take to see the fullness of God's promise? How do we actively engage with the healing process in our daily lives? The first step in moving forward is a shift in how we view ourselves, our past, and our future. When we come to Jesus for restoration, we're not just looking for a spiritual band-aid to cover our wounds. Jesus is offering us a complete renewal of vision. Think about it for a moment. Every day, the world offers us a way of seeing things that is shaped by external circumstances, societal expectations, and even our own pain. But Jesus invites us to see through the lens of faith, to view our lives not in terms of loss, but in terms of His victory. This new vision begins with a realization. The years that seemed wasted are not beyond His ability to redeem. Jesus is in the business of taking broken things and making them whole. That doesn't mean that He erases the scars or removes the pain of the past, but it does mean He gives us a new way of looking at the story of our lives. Your life, dear friend, is not defined by the years you wish you could undo. It is defined by the incredible grace of Jesus Christ, who has the power to transform every season, no matter how dark. In order to move forward in restoration, you must see your life as God sees it, filled with potential, purpose, and a future that is filled with hope. God's plan for you has always been one of goodness and restoration. Your past may have been filled with mistakes, failures, and pain, but God has already redeemed those moments in the sacrifice of His Son, Jesus. You are not defined by your past mistakes or what the world tells you about your worth. You are a beloved child of God, intricately woven into His divine plan, and He has great things ahead for you. Restoration, like all things in life, happens according to God's perfect timing, and His timing is often different from ours. In the world we live in, we want quick results. We want immediate healing, fast progress, and instant gratification. But with God, His timing is always perfect. While we might feel impatient, frustrated, or discouraged when we don't see immediate change, it's important to remember that God is never in a hurry, and He is always working behind the scenes. Consider the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph's life was filled with incredible hardship, betrayal by his brothers, years of unjust imprisonment, and being overlooked and forgotten. But God had a plan for Joseph, one that didn't follow a straight path. Instead, it was a winding road filled with pain, but also moments of divine intervention and growth. Joseph paced in the hotel dormitory, looking around and thinking of Jesus. Joseph eventually rose to a position of great authority, and the very brothers who had sold him into slavery came to him for help during a time of famine. In the same way, God's restoration in our lives often involves waiting, trusting, and allowing His plan to unfold. While we might not understand why things are taking longer than we expect, we can trust that God is sovereign and His timing is always best. The years you feel were wasted may seem like a long wait, but in God's perfect timing, He will redeem every moment. One of the most difficult parts of walking forward in restoration is surrendering our need for control. We often try to fix our own problems, take matters into our own hands, and demand results on our terms. However, true restoration can only happen when we are willing to release control and trust in God's ability to handle what we cannot. In the Bible, we see countless examples of individuals who had to let go of their own plans and trust God's purposes. Abraham, for example, was promised by God that he would be the father of many nations. Yet, for years he had no children, and his faith was tested. Finally, Abraham surrendered to God's plan, and in God's perfect timing, his wife Sarah bore him a son, Isaac. God's promise to Abraham was fulfilled in a way that Abraham could never have imagined. Surrendering to God doesn't mean giving up. It means letting go of our own timeline and trusting in His. It's about recognizing that we are not in control, and when we release our hold on the outcomes, God is free to work in ways we could never orchestrate ourselves. As we walk forward in the path of restoration, we must constantly check our hearts and ask ourselves, are we fully surrendering our past, our pain, and our future to Jesus? A key aspect of restoration is the understanding that healing doesn't happen in one instant and it doesn't look perfect. Many of us want to be fixed immediately, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. We want to be made whole right away. But healing is a process, not a magic moment. It's a journey that takes time, effort, and patience. And throughout that journey, there will be setbacks, challenges, and even moments when we wonder if healing will ever truly come. Yet, healing is not about achieving perfection. It's about progress. It's about moving forward, step by step, in faith, and trusting that God is doing the work in us. It's about recognizing that our scars are part of the story that God is writing in our lives. They are not signs of failure, but testimonies of God's grace and faithfulness. As we focus on healing, we begin to understand that restoration doesn't mean becoming flawless. It means becoming whole, becoming who God created us to be, with all of our imperfections made beautiful in His grace. Finally, walking in the path of restoration means trusting that God's work in you is a process. Just as a child grows over time, we too grow spiritually, emotionally, and mentally as we walk with Jesus. There is no quick fix to a deep, soul-level healing. It takes time, reflection, and perseverance. But in the end, the restoration that Jesus offers is beyond what we could ever achieve on our own. Beloved in Christ, we've journeyed together through the powerful truth that Jesus is about to restore all of your wasted years. We've explored the depths of God's grace, the timing of restoration, and the steps that we need to take as we walk forward in faith. Now, I invite you to take action. This message is not just for you to listen to and absorb. It is a call to respond, a call to actively participate in the restoration that Jesus is bringing into your life. If you've been waiting for healing, if you've been wondering how your past can ever be redeemed, know that today is the day to choose the path forward. It's time to surrender your pain, to trust in God's perfect timing, and to embrace the fullness of His restoration. If you've been touched by this message, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and join the community of believers who are walking daily with Jesus. We're not just a group of people watching videos, we are a family, a body of believers supporting one another in our faith journeys. Subscribe today and turn on notifications so that you can continue to receive the spiritual guidance, encouragement, and prayers that you need for your walk with Jesus. As you move forward, share this message with others who need to hear it. There are many around you who may be struggling with their own brokenness, their own pain, and their own feelings of wasted years. Let them know that Jesus is the answer, that He is the great restorer, and that He is at work even now, healing and redeeming. Finally, remember this: Jesus is with you. You are not alone in your journey of restoration. He will guide you, strengthen you, and carry you through every moment. Keep trusting Him. Keep walking forward in faith. And know that He is about to restore all that the locusts have eaten. As we conclude this powerful journey through the message of restoration, I want to invite you, beloved, to respond today. This is not just a message for the mind. It is a call to action for your spirit. Jesus is calling you right now to step into the fullness of the restoration He promises. He is ready to redeem the years that feel lost, to heal the wounds that still ache, and to lead you into a future filled with hope and purpose. I understand that it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the pain of the past, the regrets, and the lost time. But I assure you, beloved, there is no wasted time in God's economy. What you may perceive as years lost to suffering, struggle, or mistakes, God sees as opportunities for His transformative power. This is the moment where Jesus invites you to lay down your burdens and to embrace His healing touch. You don't need to carry that weight any longer. He is ready to restore you. If you've heard this message today and felt something stirring in your heart, I urge you to take a step of faith. Believe that the same Jesus who healed the sick, gave sight to the blind, and raised the dead is the same Jesus who can restore all of your wasted years. There is no wound too deep, no regret too great that Jesus cannot heal.